Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk Together. Thank you for joining us for an evening of talking about Dungeons and Dragons. I'm Tom Jancis, and I shall be your host tonight. I am talking, well, if you don't recognize this face, where have you been?
Who, me?
It's you!
No,
Chris! Chris! Hooray!
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm here in my home. I never leave my home, and that is good.
Why would you want to go outside? What is there outside?
Plague and death.
Cold and deceit. It's just a world of deceit out there.
I'm joking. I took my dog on a walk earlier, and it was very pleasant.
Marvellous. There's that one thing, I will go outside for the dog.
It's the only thing that lives. Dog and child, they are my reason to leave home, otherwise never.
Everything will come to my doors and that will be fine.
I mean, these days, it's amazing how much can come to your doors. Like, stuff I used to go, we're not talking about this, but stuff I used to have to, like, trek all over the place to find out how to order and it turns up. It's so much easier. Yeah.
Thanks, technology.
Yeah.
Right, so while we are going to go off down these avenues, this should last about an hour. Let's see how we do. And we are delighted to be sponsored by Hero Forge, Ultra Pro, and Elderwood Academy. And we are supported by D&D Beyond, Warriors of Waterdeep, and Level Up Dice. And final bit of gubbins, we are Roll Together RPG on all social networks and media. And a massive thank you to our D20 Club, our dice heads. Our shows are available as podcasts. If you just search Roll Together RPG on your favorite podcasting app, we will turn up. I don't know why I always sound so defeated. I'm like, we'll be there, always there, the watchers on the wall.
The tough thing with podcasts is that the whole point of podcast proliferation is that you post it in one place and then you make sure it gets picked up by other people and then it goes to a bunch of other people beyond that. So I don't know all the places the podcast is. I couldn't tell you. I know where we upload it because I tend to do the uploading. But beyond that, it appears in so many places. Like the other day, I was doing a sort of chase around of what are the stats on some of the things that we do, because it's always good to have that information, especially for sponsors. And I was chasing up, and I found a podcast website that I'd never seen before. And I found that we were on it with lots of nice comments and reviews, and just went, oh,
hello.
I literally had no idea this existed. Cool. Yay.
It is like some strange thing of like, great, thank you. Actually,
more people know. Good.
I had my first someone going, I think I've seen you.
Oh.
Of course, they were friends with Nat, but they were like, you're from a thing. And I was like, I was on this campaign. It's like, no, I was like, I turn up. You've seen me around.
It's such a weird thing. I have had it multiple times now, normally at TTRPG style events and stuff like that, where I will get sort of, I was about to say accosted. That is rude. I do not mean accosted. But it is an odd feeling. I'm not a, I mean, it's pretty much common knowledge that I'm a relatively anxious person, that I take medication for an anxiety disorder. I don't like leaving the house that much. And when I go to social events and people go, oh, I recognize you, there is initially fear. It's the, oh God, oh no, do you know more about me than I want you to know? But then again, if I didn't want people to know about it, I shouldn't talk on the internet. So there is an element of that too. It's a very interesting marriage between wanting to present shows, wanting to put streams on the... I love putting streams on the internet. I love people watching the shows that we do. It's really, really great. And I love sharing stories in that way. And I think some personal connection to that, stuff like this, where you go, who is this person? What are they all about? Is great. But then there's in person going, who are you?
Yeah.
Who am I to you? Which I don't know. I've no way of knowing who I am to you. And who am I to anybody? What? Because celebrity, even minor celebrity, very, very minor celebrity, is a very, very strange kettle of fish. But it is fascinating.
Yeah.
And being recognized, there is that. You still get the jubilance, don't you? You still get the kind of, oh, you've seen me in a thing. That's nice. I mean, you're more of an actor than I am, so that does make sense. Yeah.
We're just like, oh, darling.
Darling, I mean, possibly. No, couldn't.
Did you see my pip? A 12-parter, you know. I'll just sign a picture of a deer. Like, why are you carrying that around with you? I had a couple of weeks ago that I went to see a friend's show, and sort of my friend got very shy, and I was like, okay, I'm talking to like the brother of someone who was working there. Sure. And he was like, oh yeah, no, sort of like you work as an actor, writer, what's your name? What's your do? And then he just went, I'm a police officer, by the way. And I was just like, oh. And that sort of strange thing of just going, if you wanted to get my information, you complimenting my work, that's how you get, you're like, interesting, what's your name? What do you do? Any communists? Any...
Yeah, that's how McCarthy worked. He went to parties and was very convivial. That was McCarthy's trick. We should learn. Oh God, that's awful. Really,
yeah, just that sort of, and because sort of, oh God, this is going down a different thing, but because there were drag performers, he started asking some questions that I was like, I can't answer that. And yeah, no, sort of like about identities and stuff. He's like, well, how can you tell? And I was like, I'm no. And he's like, yeah, but I'm police. I'm like,
Did he really say, yeah, but I'm the police? You have to answer. I mean, good grief.
I think he was joking, but I'm not sure he was.
That's a question I, as a trans person, can't answer. Yeah. Someone said to me, tell me about identity. I go, which head trauma do you want today? Like, which bit of it do you want to talk about now? There's so many. I don't know enough about any of them to feel confident speaking about them, and yet I live them. It's a very, very strange world to live in. Yeah.
Well, what a way to start a conversation about Dungeons and or Dragons.
I cannot wait to talk to the police about my gender identity. That's been added to the list of things to be anxious about, Tom. That's what that is.
That's what I do. I just sort of come in. I'm like, hey, wouldn't this be bad? And you're like, yes, very bad. Add it to the list.
I mean, it's up there with talking to my parents about it, although they have consistently proven themselves to gain more understanding over time, which is all I can ask for.
That's good. Like, yeah.
It's still scary. Your parents.
Yeah. It always is when you kind of, try to... Oh, parents, eh?
Well, mine are lovely. Mine are, well, I'm a bit older, so mine are a bit older. They're in their 70s now. They've lived in Germany for so long that their version of British is like 1970s, 1980s British almost. Yeah. So they live in this strange, antiquated vision of the world. And yet they're these sort of sparks of modernity that bounce into it. And of course, because they live in Germany, they're very integrated with European culture and a very different culture as well. So I think the most fascinating conversation we tend to have on a weekly basis, because we talk weekly, is what different news has been presented.
Sure.
Because the UK news obviously is horrifically partisan, but it's not like German news isn't. It's just a very different kind of partisan. So you see very different stories, and it's when I go, did you see the thing about this? And they go, oh, from our perspective, it was this. And how fascinating. They're very erudite people. They're both very smart. Yeah.
Compliment to Chris's parents there.
I mean,
they
were both in Mensa. They're both incredibly intelligent people. It's scary.
So, I think we've got some exciting talking. I was just trying to find a connection there. I was like talking about exciting, intelligent, wonderful, lovely people. What we got on the docket?
Where do you want to start? Go on. I mean,
should we? Because we're coming to the conclusion of a few of our big. Should we cover that? Should we sort of like do a little bit of a roundup?
A roundup of Warriors of Waterdeep, the Dragon of Harvest Shield Mountain, Tom. Let me check my agenda and make sure that's what we had to talk about.
Again, you don't look down. You're like, yes, Tom, that is what we were supposed to be talking about 4 minutes ago. I'm like, oopsie.
I mean, we're not that professional.
God no.
Yeah, we finished on Tuesday this week. That's right.
Yeah. This is where I just asked the one show style question of like, how was that for you? Did you have fun?
I love DMing the Warriors of Waterdeep games because we've done 2 now, and as was alluded to on Tuesday, yes, there is a third in the offing. More on that as we can reveal more. Because it's such a different job. Like, so much of DMing is I have a grand plan. I give it to the players, they tear it to shreds, and we tell a story. Because that's a good thing. I want it to be torn to shreds. My grand plans are never that grand. The point that then comes from that often is that you are improvising, you are working with players, and if they have a cool new idea or a thing they want to try out, you roll with it. From a previous game, a good example, Gloom Falls on Baldur's Gate 12-parter, so there was lots of time for that to happen. My initial concept for a lot of the set pieces that they did was very different. Not because I didn't think they'd do it in the way that they would do it, but because I assumed that characters would behave differently, which is a fair assumption to make as a storyteller. But then they, as characters, made big, bold choices. And it was my job to roll with those big, bold choices and then improvise out these lovely set pieces. The final confrontation with the gigantic Nightwalker, and then going into the negative energy plane at the end of the season. Spoilers if you haven't watched it, but it's about, a year old now? 6 months old? I can't remember. That was improvised on the spot in places, and then in between episodes gone, okay, I thought it was going there, it's going there now, I need to research all of that and make sure I have all of that down pat so we can do this bit over there. If we want to go there, they might want to go there. And it was nice to have an adventure that was more player-led, because some of my previous ones haven't been. They've been a bit more didactic, this is the way the story must go. But then in Warriors, I have to be didactic. Because we're playing through the plot of another story that has already been told. We have to hit plot beats as part of doing that. But also we can make light of that. We can have fun within that context to go, look at that. We have, have we broken the game because we're supposed to fight that person and now we're not?
Yeah.
And for the first season, I was adamant in prep and plan that they had to fight the things. That in the game, you go through rooms and you fight the monsters and you defeat them all and then you finish the game. Well done, you. Whereas in the narrative of the D&D story, you wouldn't fight everything. Certain creatures would ally themselves with you. You'd have more of a, well, maybe these two things work together to fight that thing. And with the second one, I went, actually, I can see areas within this narrative where we have a lot of humanoid enemies, because Harvest Shield Mountain in the game, there's gnolls and hobgoblins and all sorts of other, what tend to be called beast races, but is not a great term, who are working to try and clear this mountain of all the monsters from it. And I looked at that as a DM and went, why would they fight people coming in doing the same thing?
Yeah.
Do I want to set up that you don't have to fight everything? Do I want to set up that if you encounter these creatures, you might work together with them to get more done? Which led to one of my favourite set pieces of the whole campaign, where we had Chimera, which are villains in the game, obviously. I gave them motivation and purpose. And I gave the players motivation and purpose to not just kill them. And we had a really tense hour-long set piece of trying to talk them out of fighting while the rogue snuck into their place and stole stuff, at which point everyone went, well, this is not great, is it? With this hole we've dug, oh my God, has this gotten worse? And then the players had to then work out, do we fight them now because we've made an error? Or do we go, oh, this has gone slightly differently from how we expected it? Do we still try and talk it out? And it led to some really nice storified, can we run this in a way that still is the game but has different permutations on that? And I think we got it right. I'd say we got about 80% of the way there from what I was hoping to do.
That's fair.
It's pretty unusual for a game. I never go, that was 100% what I expected. It's always, we aimed.
Again, sort of like watching where you've had moments where you're like, well, like in the first season where it's like, yeah, we just threw the skeleton, was it the skeleton? Just threw him off the side, and you're just like, well, that's the end of that combat. You know, you're like, I'm defeated, but it's not.
I'm going to be cruel now and say I'm not going to pretend that wasn't planned.
Oh no. Yeah.
Because
yeah.
If I create a monster that can knock things into the depths, and I create a situation where the depths exist and things can be knocked into it, it stands to reason that the players will knock the monster into the depths as well.
I suppose that is a nice way of going, yes, very well done. You defeated my skeleton puzzle.
Part of the conceit of D&D is that the players are always being original. And that's totally fine. That's part of the conceit. As a DM, I think part of your job is to second guess your players steer them into situations where they can win, do something awesome, and give them the feeling that they thought of it first. I like that. I like doing that as a DM. I think it's really lovely when you manage to go, oh no, okay, you're doing that instead. That's very smart, or whatever. We can talk about Tuesday again as a good example. I made the dragon, and I purposely pointed out that it was more elementally charged than other dragons, and a book about dragons just come out. Indeed, it's released Fizban's something of dragons. It's always something of something. And it has a bit in going, maybe your dragons could absorb fire damage and actually heal from it, not just be immune to it. And I put a pool of lava in one corner of the boss battle. And at one point I was going to have the dragon dive into the pool of lava and heal itself a little bit. But I thought it was a nice different take on that and a way to make the battle a bit different. But I also wanted it as an environmental trap to throw players into it. And I fully expected that M's Shivarith wizard, who has Wall of Force, would probably cover it up. Yeah. Fully expected, fully planned. Of course, you've got Wall of Force and someone nearly falls into it. Cover it up. That makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you do it? And it also takes away an element of the battle that I wanted to have potentially for later. But that's good, because it means the player then goes, I foiled you, I tricked you, I managed to defeat your plan. And you go, yes, you did. That's really good. Wonderful work.
I'm just
great
so
stuff.
proud of you. Yeah.
Not even so proud. There's probably a paternalistic energy in me because I'm a dad that does make sense. I use father and dad even then. But there is an element of that to me, which is very much I want to put players in situations where they'll succeed. Because as a game, D&D can be frustrating, where you think you've got a clever plan that'll do something and it doesn't work. Or where you as a player want to do the thing that saves the day or whatever, and it just doesn't click. I really feel for players in those moments because you want to be the savior of the day. You want to be the hero. There's a lot of joy to be taken out of, no, that's a horrific failure. Let's all enjoy that failure together. But sometimes you don't want to fail. No. And putting players in positions where they don't have to fail is a really important part of being a DM, and giving them the space to not fail and trying to set up scenarios where their items, their spells, their abilities would be a really good thing in this situation to not fail. Part of that, definitely.
I think it's, again, the sort of, and I think Roll Together is a nice example that I keep seeing things where like, oh, this is how you get one over on your players, this is how you trick. And you're like, no, it's collaborative. It's that sort of thing. We're like, as you said, that sort of weird thing going, good, you've picked up on the lava pit. Yep. That's, the dragon's looking down, well, not using that anymore. That same sort of, yes, he said that idea of just going, if you wanted to TPK, cool, great. But then I think especially like for this, where we're like, we are trying to make an entertaining story that people are watching, and then you're just like, cool. I was about to say if they fall in a hole, and then I'm remembering Ed spending most of an episode down. But that, again, that beautiful, where you're like, here's a challenge, off you go, just.
Which was, again, a good example of a specific challenge of restraint. It was specifically there to go, you won't be able to solve this quickly or easily. It is meant to be a challenge. I'm going to push back on any old let's sort this and get it out, to raise the stakes on the tension, to create this tense moment we can all enjoy together. But I'm not going to kill someone in a hole. I think come on now. I'm not going to kill someone in a hole. That's ridiculous. It's not going to happen. This is all very much designed to be a chance for you all to work together, to find complementary moments, complementary skill sets and things that click and reinforce each other. Because that's the fun of this. The first stage is my character can do things and I'm very comfortable and happy in my character. The second stage is we're doing stuff together and we as a party have found a way to deal with these scenarios. I don't understand DMs who want to TPK players and go, why can't I TPK my players? It's really not hard to TPK a group of players. If you want to, it's not difficult at all, because you are the DM. That attack doesn't hit. Why? I said so. Yeah. He can cast shield at a level that means that his armor class is 55. He does it every round. Oh no, you didn't kill it.
Oh dear, very sad.
I'm going to roll its attack. Oh, look, it did max damage. That's 478 points of damage.
It's just Finger of Death. It just kept
Yeah.
yeah.
There are plenty of save or search spells. If that's what you're worried about, do that. I think most DMs who say I can't fight my players are not actually trying to kill their players. I think they are struggling with D&D's inherent bias towards the player character, which is a good thing. You've all seen Tuesday. I killed Halbernet. Killed them. Just one and done. Did enough damage to completely take them over. And it was a shocking moment. It was a tense moment. I was never going to let the character die outright. Using the in-game mechanic of, you've died, you got enough gems to come back, was very enjoyable and very silly, and it also took that moment of intensity and lampooned it a little bit, which is nice. But I sort of assumed that something like that was going to happen because the dragon does enough damage to do the insta-kill effect in D&D, which is in one of the rare occasions where you can just kill something outright. Like, Halbernet has a magic item, which Halbernet has in-game and we've tweaked for D&D rules, but one of the things it does is it gives you hit points at the start of your turn. Not temps, not things that can't heal you, it literally heals you at the start of your turn. Which means if you play your cards right, your party will never die. And that's good. I don't want the party to die. I never want the party to die outright. I want the tension that they might.
I imagine that you're like, oh yeah, Halbernet's dead. Here's another character, just so taking from the roster. You're like, here's the barbarian.
Looks like Ed's playing Jarlaxle. No, there's again because it's a licensed product and we are running in a licensed world. We have product licenses for characters. We're allowed to show certain characters. We're not allowed to show others. And that's fine. I mean, it's a licensed product. I get that that's an issue. But that means that there's a lot of questions that come up with things like that. Like, can we do this? No, we can't. A bit like I imagine producers, I know producers on movies sometimes go, can we kill off Leatherface? Can we finally destroy Chucky? No. No, you can't. We don't own the license for that, or it's too valuable a product to destroy. You cannot. Like, let's talk about this one other way. I'm sure No Way Home's going to be a great Spider-Man film, but you and I both know Spider-Man can never die.
And then a part of me was like, but what if he did? Just like, no, it's not going to happen.
No, they'll put Miles Morales.
Maguire's not just going to come swinging in and going, I'm back.
No, they'll put Miles Morales in.
Yeah.
Like, the end of Infinity War is so good because you kill off all these characters. You go, they can't. There's no way. And then it goes, and that's the end of the film. And you go, what? No, then you can't. You can't kill these characters. They're all too valuable, and I love them. But that's the point. That kind of thinking has also given us that sense of security around adventure stories because licensable characters are too valuable. Like, I respect the hell out of killing off James Bond. It's a wonderful thing. But you and I both know James Bond isn't dead. It'll just be another actor.
Spoilers for those people who haven't seen that. But
oh, come on. It's called No Time to Die. Daniel Craig's done tours saying it's my last James Bond ever. If you haven't worked it out by now, he dies at the end of the film.
Yeah. But then it says, James Bond will return.
Of course it does. And it has to. Because James Bond will always return. That's what it says at the end of every James Bond film. That's the whole point. And then there's a great example of going, the character will never die in some capacity if it's a code name or God knows what else. But the actor can.
Yeah.
They've already set up in the past that the actor can leave the role, and there's an implication sometimes that the actor's left the role and is a completely different person. So I think there are ways to look at that in terms of franchising and developing characters in that way. But I do also think that we've got a full sense of security, and I think D&D steers into that full sense of security. We can play a character so hard to finally kill. And it's also part of the game to have people go, oh, they're dying, I must do the thing. Death's door, I do the healing spell. They're fine now, it's all good. Like that's part of the process of D&D, and it's an important part of the process of D&D. Insta-kill things tend to be when you've got CR balance wrong, or you as a DM intended to do it because you've got to get out of jail free card, which is what Tuesday was.
So, as we said, sort of at the end of that campaign, sort of anything else that's sort of like you're thinking back on, and you're sort of like, what were your highlights? What were those like bright moments, or that like you were proud of yourself, or like what the players, or something that surprised you? Just a chance to reflect.
We did this at the start of the episode, so I've got a list of things that I know the players really liked. I think there's one or two on there that they didn't mention, which I can, so that's good.
Yeah.
I stand by what I said in that originally. There were some wonderful one-liners in this season, some really good ones. People's improv and playing with each other was on point. You know, Tom, we as a company rotate casts all the time and rotate characters all the time. And that is intentional and important because it allows access points for viewers and it allows access points for new players. And these are things that we need to have, and new DMs as well, sorry. And that we need to have that because we don't want it to be any of this to have any reflection of one person. That means we don't have a lot of time with characters often. Not a lot of time to play them or develop their story arcs or develop their interpersonal relationships. We don't have that critical role. We've been playing together for 100 plus episodes. These characters know each other, and we don't have that, which is a shame. And maybe there's a chance of doing something a bit differently in the future. But for now, it's always going to be quite short-lived. This campaign, because it's had 2 seasons and it's the same characters and the same actors, has already got to a point where their interactivity with each other is hilarious. Not just as players who know each other really well, who make jokes with each other, but as characters who know each other really well and make jokes with each other. And not even just make jokes, tell good stories, create good scenes, good moments. Shivareth and Thomas, about to say, actualizing their relationship. Like, it is a relationship now. They had a snog, they held hands. Like, it's very much like they are, I guess, the D&D equivalent of dating.
Yeah.
Facebook, it's complicated. But no, I don't know. Facebook in a relationship, I don't know what that means yet. Like, there's an element of their scenes with each other had some lovely, quiet, gentle moments and some lines that I can't repeat because I can't remember them exactly. But just this beautiful, calm, long-form improv thing that you get with D&D when you've played it for a long time. That is a big part of home tables and sometimes not a big part of live tables and actual play tables. It's very hard to replicate that quickly. It's remarkable stuff. There were lots and lots of those. And also the humour. We've all been playing together for so long that we can make good jokes. And I joked about this at the top of the season, at the top of the last episode, at the final episode, that there's a point where the giant just comes back to a you're all small, well, you're all big with potato. I really enjoyed that. The fact that I felt comfortable enough as a DM to go, here is a really important character who's going to make a random joke back at you for a comment that you made. Shows how well we all know each other now. And I think that's one of my favourite things about the show, is that we have had a chance to do what we so rarely get to do, which is build that relationship over time. I mean, I said it in the top of the last episode, but I think it's worth repeating. I mean, I love Ed, and we all know how much I love Ed. Very strange relationship we have, but his portrayal of Halbernet throughout the last 2 seasons has been absolutely gorgeous. I mean, A, he's playing someone non-binary, which he is not, and he's finding a lot of ways into that and through that, which are really good. And B, he's so good at finding sort of personal narrative in these things and these sort of delicate personal storylines. The fact that we've now developed that into an ex-relationship with Ariel Silverhand of all people, that it's that line. It is just that line. It really encapsulates how good Ed is. Off the cuff, he said it's better to have regrets than to regret having no regrets at all. I mean, how does one improvise that, Tom?
Yeah.
It has cadence and rhythm. It's gorgeous. And moments like that are when you go, A, we're nailing this, and B, we're so gifted with the players that we have, especially playing with each other so much, of having that kind of ability to pull lines like that out of the air and pull arcs like that out of the air and tell stories together. I think that side of it this time we absolutely nailed. I loved some of the combat set pieces. I'll be honest, the dragon set piece at the end I enjoyed, but it was always going to be the big fight at the end, so I was limited a little by this has to be deadly and that sort of thing. The dragon attacking the citadel was... I'd planned out some bits of it, but then the players happened, and I love that episode because it's mad. The rushing around of trying to work out how this is going to work. That's all of us on the fly going, how the hell is this going to work? And the one following of it's not really a combat set piece, but the sneaking in set piece is also one where we went, well, I thought they'd be climbing the mountain by now. Okay, cool, right, let's see. And it became this whole lovely, like, this is totally unscripted, unplanned. Even within the context of the story of the game, we are winging this a little bit, and that's grand. But then there's a combat set piece with flesh golems relatively early on, where they're making their way through a wizard's house who wanted to help the farmlands around them by making things that would help with the work, and decided golems is the best way to do that, which is not a good idea. And it's in the game. There's elements of it in the game about golems being living scarecrows, and I fleshed that out a lot and built a lot of detail into that to make this sort of really quite charming oddball wizard who I had in the back of my mind as being raised by gnomes and having a gnomish name despite being humanoid, and all of this sort of delicate backstory that they uncovered pieces of as bits happened around the house. And the combat itself was quite nicely handled. There was teleportation and things like that. It was very funny and also quite dark. I think as a set piece, as a what can we achieve within the confines of someone else's story, developing it ourselves with the final product, and that was I think we nailed that one. That felt like a very sort of solid, this is a moment where it's all come together in a really good way.
I think that, again, that is the interesting thing for the game, where there's backstory, but there isn't so much plot where you're like, and then again, these relationships, and you can always sort of argue, like, go, okay, the game is like the retelling of the story, and then go, actually, this is what happened. Halbernet got stuck at the bottom of a trap. We're not putting that in the legend. That's just
a terrible level of the game. Ixnay on the app tray.
it's one of those, when you're seeing those weird adverts where, like, oh, you need to stop the water getting in the pit. Just that. It's Halbernet going, let me out. I'm stuck.
Why has no one got levitate? Yeah, and if we're talking about things I wish had happened differently,
sure.
I think my drive to not just make it a hack and slash game turned into a D&D stream meant that I shied away a little from pushing combat.
Okay.
Like, people have pointed out that in the episode where they're sneaking around in Rolier's quarters and they just bungle it, and Rolier turns up and says, "What, it's Rolier? Emma's keep doing this. Keep taking NPCs and pronouncing the names, and then I pronounce it their way, not the way I'm supposed to." And Roliet turns up, and there's helmed horrors there, and they're not fighting, they're just holding doors closed and making sure it doesn't boil over, which made sense for the characterization of Roliet I had planned, but also felt like a bit of a cop-out.
Sure.
Like, why wasn't there a fight? There could easily have been a fight, it would have been fun, it would have been great. Yeah, it would have been a bit like, I had some thoughts about this and we just cut our way out and it's a shame. But that is also the game that we're presenting. I think I leaned too far in the other direction this time round. And thankfully, I'm very proud that we have a third season coming up with an opportunity again to go, I can find a middle ground. I can find a balance here that I will feel more comfortable with. I mean, Ludia couldn't be happy with either show. They've said, like, both are fantastic and they love the way that we've done them. But I am as people probably are aware, I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I tend to berate myself for things that don't go the way that I think they should have gone. And I'm constantly pushing to get things more of the direction that I feel they should be in. And it's a useful trait. It's a little isolating. That's fine. And I think that's one of the things about this I would be pushing for in season 3. I think we're also falling into that trap that happens when players play together for a long time, but they want to talk all the time. They want to roleplay all the time. It's perfectly fine. But it does mean that episodes often took a good hour to really start, because players wanted to talk about all the emotional feels from the last episode before we actually started doing anything. You can integrate that better, and I wasn't better at going, no, do the thing, you'll have time later, because that you'll always have time later. I don't want to cut out those scenes, they're good, but if you're coming and going, hey, here's a stream, we're going to talk now for half an hour about all the things that happened last time, and the intro took 20 minutes because you ramble. Yeah.
You're just sitting there rolling dice and just going, interesting. No, keep telling me about your relationship. Ooh, okay.
No, I think the balance was slightly wrong, and that it's not the end of the world that the balance was slightly wrong, because I think it also countermanded some of the we're just hacking and slashing from the first season. So I think there's got to be that balance point, and that's fine. I just know that if I look at it as scales, and if that one was a little bit too far that way, this one was a little bit too far that way, and now it's balancing those out.
Well, again, I think that's. I think this interview is the perfect thing where we're just enjoying having a nice chat and just that same sort of. And again, that's the problem. You're going to get people who are like, "Oh, I'm really into like the interpersonal relationship stuff," and then people go, "I want to see them fight an ogre." When's it going to roll some dice? Again, when you're going to roll some dice?
When you're going to roll some dice? Well, Orion, who's the producer of Dimension 20. Tweets about this quite a lot, and they're a wonderful, intelligent, vivacious personality at the best of times, but they often point this out. What is your stream? You have to decide what your stream is. You can choose to define it however you want, but define it. Because if you don't define it, you're doing everything. I like that we as Roll Together don't define it. I think it's better that DMs define it individually. I think that's also down to DM style more than anything else. And I like that particular show is also defined a bit more as, well, it's based on a hack and slash game. There's going to be some hack and slash elements and there's going to be some crunchy dice rolling. Let's steer into that a little bit. And I think in this one, I steered into but we're actors, we're performers, we like to tell good stories, we like to role play a lot. I think that took a driving seat, where I think it should be an equal pairing. Like, I've run games in the past where it's not been an equal pairing, and that's totally fine. I know which side of that coin I tend to sit on. But in a game that is based on a game, maybe there should be a little more even keelness about that, and we shouldn't get too obsessed with, let's talk about character backstory, and we could be, fighting it. Because don't get me wrong, I love getting streams where you fight an ogre. I like D&D combat, I like playing it, I like watching it. As you probably know from watching me play any character I do, I tend to make characters that are quite combat effective, because I enjoy doing cool combat effective stuff. So, like Gertie was designed to be ridiculously combat effective, and was. That was the whole point of Gertie, was that Gertie was a very good Power Ranger. Well, Green Lantern, Power Ranger, some sort of culture smoosh. But she was designed to be, effective. Guiding bolts for days is already effective. Add into that you can be a really good healer, and with flying you can buzz anywhere. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. So I think possibly looking at season 3 going a bit more crunch. Bit more crunch. Yeah, season 3, the crunchy season. Yeah. I mean, I've played it in the game, and certainly crunchy.
Right. So that was Warriors of Waterdeep. What do you feel? Do you want to talk about some other stuff that's coming up, or do you want to roll some dice?
I feel like if we only talk about things that are coming up, we'll never roll dice. So why don't we roll dice in between other stuff? Because we've got a lot to talk about. So there's lots of things coming up, but let's roll the dice in the meantime. Yeah.
That's hello, friends. Well, looking at the timer, 37 minutes into it.
This isn't going to be an hour. I'm calling it now. This is not going to be an hour long. This is going to be at least an hour and a half. Calling it now.
I've got a feeling that I'm just going to go. Should we just try and get it?
I mean,
nah.
I'm just cutting into the other stream on Check These Out that I'm playing in now.
sorry, past me.
It'll be a late raid. Sorry, past me.
Okay, chat. Let's do it. Let's roll that dice.
Roll that dice.
That, believe it or not, is an actual 20.
Okay. Very impressive.
Okay, and again, we both admitted we do not remember what questions we've asked. So, Chris, does this sound familiar? What character was hardest to say goodbye to?
I'm not sure if I've answered it before, but I think it's probably the same answer. But I don't know if I've already answered it, so I'm just going to answer it normally.
Sure.
When I started playing 5th edition, because I don't know how many people know this, I started playing 3rd and 3.5 when I was young, with mythic Fargon age. And it was fun, but I didn't play many characters in 3 and 3.5. What it tended to be more was theory crafting and sitting down with friends and talking about D&D, but not a lot of actual play, because 3.5 was fantastic but inaccessible. Like flat-footed AC. That's the example I always come back to. What's your armor class? Well, it's this. Unless I'm in a surprise round and then it's lower, but then it goes up again, If you have multiple attacks around, they have different proficiencies to hit. Oh, it was very complicated. But it was really fun to theorycraft around, because they designed a game where your standard character class was good, but multi-classing was like you could, and there was certain design elements about it that were like, this is a good thing to do. But the only reason you would really multi-class is to get prestige classes. And also, prestige classes were literally anything. And it meant if you've got 5 levels in this, 2 levels in that, and can cast the spell Detect Magic, you can get this prestige class or whatever. And they were brilliant, because it meant that anyone could go, oh, I really fancy playing that character. Here's prestige class for it. Like you see on DM's Guild, I've made a new subclass for this character, for this class, or a new subclass for this class. That's the same narrative drive, the same creative drive. I want to play X. I can't see how to do it in the rules. So if I get 6 levels of that and 4 levels of that and this, and this, then I can make this and do that. That was the principle. And it was very cool. And there was a lot of 3.5 that was theory crafting. Dragon Magazine at that point was less of the, here's what D&D is selling this month. Nothing wrong with that. Dragon Magazine is lovely, and the editor's a great guy. But it's more of a, Dragon Magazine was theory crafting. It was, we should do more of this. We should do more of that. Here's 5 classes based on monks who punch people who aren't Asian themed or Asian world designed. It was very much about playing with different ideas around some of that. It was very cool. So I didn't play much. But then when I started playing 5th, when Chloe and I were starting off Adventurers Wanted, we started a home game to go, do we think this is going to work as a story? And 5 of us who were very close, 6 of us who were very close at the time and sadly aren't anymore, we all made standard archetypal characters basically and did a bit of playing, and we played together for about 3 years, I think. I couldn't tell you when we paused. There was lots of one person stopped and then we brought someone else in, but then they stopped. I think it's still going on without me in some permutation miles away, which is clever to find, obviously. And I played a wizard. I played see if you recognize this, Tom, a young, arrogant wizard who doesn't know the limits of his own strength and pushes too hard against the ideas of what the world is beyond them. I played myself. And he became they, as I became they. That's hard to define. I think he, they is probably the best definition for it. They made terrible choices, fantastic choices, interesting choices, odd choices, but it was a very lived-in character. It was very much, this is, yes. And that had wonderful story moments, some really great moments between myself and other players who, very close to the time, so lots of very close role play. And yeah, the character got sunsetted. Got on a ship and went off to deal with a zombie invasion in definitely not France. And it was it was the character where I went, can I play that character again? Should I play that character again? Are we going to do more? And no, I can't. It's a piece of history now. It's a nice piece of history, but it's history. And it was a very hard character to say goodbye to, because it was basically saying goodbye to a big part of my character. But also looking at that and going, that's me playing towards my youthful indiscretions. That's me playing towards my failings as a young adult is so strong a term, but to my issues as a young adult, and then through D&D going, those are issues. I'm glad I'm playing this because we're having fun with it, but also it's really good to be careful around thoughts like this. I've had addiction problems in the past. The character had a addiction to a magic item. I have interesting feelings towards parents and siblings because, not always good, not always bad, but tempestuous is certainly the right way of putting it. So did the character. There were all sorts of elements of it. The character came from a far-off land and didn't understand the customs of the local place. There were so many elements where I can go, I'm obviously playing through my own trauma, and that's fine. Yeah. We as players were all doing that, and we all understood that we were, and we had a right balance on that. But therefore, giving that character up meant that I had to sort of stop all of that and go, this is not that anymore. Yeah. So that was very hard. Very, very hard indeed, but great fun.
That's yourself true. You're I had a good time doing it. But yeah, the idea of just sort of
if you're playing D&D with friends, I think Ed made this joke recently, D&D is not therapy, but my god, it works like it. And I mean, don't go into D&D planning it to be therapy. My goodness, that's a terrible idea. But if you and the other players are all steering into, we are playing with parts of our personality that we want to challenge and push, it can be absolutely cathartic, beautiful, wonderful, the rest of the things. And it was. So yeah. That's not a character I can return to, you see what I mean? So there's no way that character's coming back.
They're off. They're saving fantasy France from zombies.
No, they're not. They went off into the sunset.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're doing, and I'm totally okay with that. That life that they are leading is outside of my ken, and that is good and important. It's gone.
You've released them like a Pokemon. You're like, off into the world.
In a way, yes. Because if I did go, well, I'm going to play a wizard again, which, I mean, if I had to pick a class that was like the one I think I would be in real life, somewhere between warlock and wizard, and wizard suits my personality better, because I'm not that charismatic. They say self-deprecating, but self-deprecating. But I think the joy of that character was all of those like personal touches. Whereas if I now wanted to play a wizard, I would probably steer more into an archetype, a stereotype, something else I fancied that was at that point in time. I wouldn't just go, here is a human wizard, off we go. Yeah.
There we go. That's thank you. That's again, yeah, just I was also thinking about the Ed comment where it was sort of like, it's not therapy. And then I do find it's fascinating, the sort of the range we've had on this show where people are like, oh, I'm not my characters. And then people just go, yeah, sort of like, I'm finding it personally interesting looking back at some of my characters and just going, what are the weirdly, like, paranoia seems to be coming out where I'm like, I know something else is going on and I'm not sure what's happening and I don't like it.
I think there's an important distinction there. There's no reason that your characters aren't you, because they are all you to a certain extent, aren't they? You're playing them. But in the same vein, I don't think every player is approaching character as a chance to pick a process. I don't think that's the point at all. Like, I think your characters are all paranoid, if you'll allow me some pop psychology here, Tom. Because you like conspiracy theories. You don't really believe in them. You're not sitting there with a tinfoil hat on going, it's all real. But that side of storytelling is something that appeals to you. So your characters often go, maybe it is! And that's like the thing that really drives you. I can see that being a thing that you as a player, you as a character creator are going, wouldn't it be fun if?
And I also think there's a part of like what were you just talking about, like the lava, where I was like, no, I thought that the lava was a trap, and I thought that, so I got it. You're like, yeah, you thought everything was a trap. So when the one time you're proven, that's why I loved Ilix, which was like, everyone wants to kill me. It's like, yes, Ilix, they do, they really do. But the little friendly person who's making you breakfast doesn't want to kill you. It's like, yeah, but if she did kill me, I'd be right. You're like, yes, but you'd also be dead. So just.
Yeah. But that's, you're not a paranoiac. You're not sitting around going, I'm paranoid about everything. Do you like to think, oh my God, what if? Of course you do. But if that's part of what your personality you like to play on screen, then that makes for good characters. Like, it's no surprise to me that Gertie became this sort of long-winded discussion about roles, responsibility, and moralizing. It's no surprise because, of course, that's something that crosses my plate sometimes. Yeah. And I liked that it could steer into that. And also, Gertie was hilarious fun to play. Yeah. Because they were a tiny, kobold, arrogant, this is the right way to do things, what's wrong with you kind of person. And that voice, these were all fun things that I really enjoyed doing. But I think I can't play a character without putting a little slice of myself in them somewhere.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like my current character for Sean's game, which launches next week, you'll get to meet them on Tuesday. They are a small rat person who has no self-confidence at all, no sense of self. And as such, if anyone tells them what to do, they just do it because it is easier. Why would you question anything? But they also have all the little friends, all these little rats, because they're a swarmkeeper ranger that they have around who they can talk to, and it's all fine, and they can just be in their little bubble, and it's all good. I empathise with that a lot. That leans into a lot of my anxieties. And yet, I don't feel anxious playing them. I've already played them a little bit because we pre-record. I don't feel anxious playing them. I feel really calm playing them because I haven't got to try and take control of the situation. I can just go, nope, this character is not a control taker. Oh, this is so relaxing. Oh God, I can just sit here and not worry about it at all. The other players will handle it. It's good. Ooh, okay.
I'll just stay here with my rat friends. It's lovely. Yeah.
And then there's that moment of going, oh God, oh, maybe I should do this all the time. Oh shit. But that's
slip into passive mode and just like, I'm having.
But that's.
I was about to say they're having a great time. Maybe they're not having a great time. They're just like, I'm in my bubble.
I would love to go, this is my bubble. There's no need to do anything in it. But I think I would get absolutely terrifyingly bored very quickly. So I think there's got to be a balance. And playing a character where I can lean into the other is really great because I can also play them for 3-4 hours and then
go back
into doing all the things, and that's good. Yeah.
Well, again, thank you for that.
Absolutely. Should we talk about Sean's? Should we talk about Sean's show since I just mentioned it?
Yeah. Okay. So you just brought up Sean's campaign. Do you want to just have a little tell us about your adventures, my friend?
Well, we only played one.
No, I want to hear all of it. I want to hear all of the secrets.
I don't know yet.
No, who's the big bad? Am I the big bad? You got to tell me if I'm the big bad.
You're not playing at this one.
Or am I? Yeah.
Sean, who some of you recognise from Windfall in Waterdeep, and then subsequently Flustered in the Feywild,
and also our spin-off, the creation of the.
Yes, forging the characters.
Forging the characters. Just made some noise and just the little friend. He makes the little friends.
He makes little friends. He makes little spinny friends.
Yeah.
I've known Sean for years. Sean's a good friend, and Sean's been playing with the company for quite a while. Sean does DM, and we'd talked about him DMing on the channel before, and it hadn't really. It was the wrong time. Wouldn't really have anything there, and we pushed it and went, you know what? Let's give it a go. And he's written and is DMing something really different for us. It's a sort of psychological horror campaign.
Okay.
It's sort of cosmic horror themed, and it's great. He's a lovely DM. He's very calm. He's very precise. He takes his time, which can't be said for me. He's very gentle, and it means we've got this sort of the way the party functions and the stories that are being told so far is just quite like there's a very cool measuredness to him as a DM, and the story is really interesting. It's a really cool show. That launches on Tuesday. It's called The Lonely House of Neverwinter. It's in Neverwinter. We never do anything in Neverwinter. Sean's a big Neverwinter fan, so he's done a nice big set piece in there. I'm playing a Ratfolk Swarmkeeper Ranger. John was last in Liz's Halls of the Undermountain King as Heimlich, is in as a new Paladin character. Liz is in it as well. Liz is playing a Furbolg. Well, I'm not going to say what class Liz is because it's absolutely not obvious until combat starts, as in any D&D stream. But it is that kind of, are you a what? Like it's really nice that you're unsure what Barley is, which is really, really great. David Shears is back again. He's got, I think, the most Shears character he's ever played.
How OP is this character?
A drow psionicist, aberrant mind, sorcerer.
Oh heckens!
It's a David character, but it's also again classic David. It's a David character, and it's steering into all the things that he loves doing, and he's doing it to aplomb. He always does. Yeah. But it's very much a David character. And oh no, hate when this happens. I'm not forgetting someone. Evie. No, Evie's not in it. No.
Evie is also very lovely.
I'm sorry, I'm running 4 shows at the moment. It's all a lot. I'm running all in. Damn it. Oh, it's our new player. That's why.
Hey!
We've got a new player joining, Lola. Lola is a friend of Sean's, and we just met them through this, and they're starting to play a bit more with us, and they're absolutely fantastic. They're playing a druid, a Circle of Stars druid, no less.
Oh,
back. Yeah. It's Circle of Stars is really, really fun. I can thoroughly recommend it. I've played it for a whole 12-parter. It is great.
I think, fun. Again, watching you play is Gertie and just like... Suppressing fire!
I mean, the dice were not my friend in that game, but that's fine. Like it was...
That's just... I think that was the beautiful thing. Like I said, going, we know Gertie is so powerful if it works, but just the constant like flying across screen and then just crashing into a wall.
Well, I played that up a bit, to be honest. There was an element of playing up with Gertie that the ability to be fantastic, but also the absolute inability to make it work every time. Because D&D is a dice-based game. If you play a character who has to succeed every time, you've made a mistake. Characters cannot succeed every time.
I also think it was beautiful for like the character arc where you're going, you can't take care of everyone. Just put aside, sometimes things don't work, but also just, again, I think that's sort of like you said, like there's the silliness to it, but then just that very, like I'm thinking about the scene we had down in, with just you going, what were you doing? And these two flawed characters who just go, but also me just going, this is the funny, like I was like, I trust you completely. Having not been there for a conversation where you're like, yeah, I might have to murder Nutmeg. If it turns out that Nutmeg's in charge, which would have just, it is like the perfect RPG thing. It's like, if I'd heard that conversation, that would completely change. Where I was like, no, you're my good friend. I love you very much.
I still do not trust Nutmeg at all.
How dare you?
I think Nutmeg's secretly a really big bad and we don't know it yet.
Considering I've brought up the fact that there's like fungal queens out there, we're just watching Nutmeg like sporing out of her mouth, and I'm like,
no. No, I think the fungal queens aren't even the worst thing. I think that whatever Nutmeg is possessed of is actually the worst thing. And you're going to go back and kill all of these fungal witches. Nutmeg will then go, finally, I can assume my true form, and it's something even worse.
like massive third eye opens up, and I'm like, oh no.
Who knows? Nutmeg is an elder god. You heard it here first.
Oh yeah, I would not be surprised.
Anyway, yes, Sean's game is on Tuesdays from next week, and it's a lot of fun. It's a very different thing for us, so well worth a look. And Sean's a fantastic DM, well worth watching. It's funny, Sean's DM'd for me once in a sort of home game environment, but I DM for him all the time. He's in one of my longest running campaigns, and it's very strange to be DM'd by him because I'm so used to the other relationship. So I'm very careful about biting my tongue with him. It's important. He is DM. I am just.
He is driving. Yeah.
Well, sometimes when those relationships are very established, it's hard to turn them around. But yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's for these sort of games where it is that sort of. And I actually think because people are talking about the eternal DM kind of issue when just going. I feel with this company, we have done a good job of like people DMing, but then also getting to play, and then just like it's not just that pressure's not just put on their shoulders. Go, you're going to be running. As you said, that nice thing of circling people in and out.
It changes the tone. It changes what we do. It changes. It means we're more of a seasonal based thing where you might like certain seasons, you might not like others, and for different that'll be different, and that's important. I also think it's good. I think, especially if my DMing improves every time I play.
Yeah.
Because there are player feelings and frustrations and thoughts that you don't think about as a DM because you DM all the time. And then you as a player go, oh, that's really frustrating. And then as a DM you go, oh, that is frustrating. You are correct. I've got to find a way to make sure that, the classic one, legendary resistances are important because otherwise status effects can destroy a boss in 30 seconds. As a player, if your job is to whittle down legendary resistances, that can feel a little demoralizing. So you've got to find a way as a DM to make sure that taking out a legendary resistance is really, really important. I'm not 100% sure I agree with the rules on how they do it at the moment. I think there should be some kind of secondary, like the monster gets less good the more legendary resistance you take away from it, something like that. I haven't quite got it yet. I don't like homebrewing rules because I feel a bit like you're just adding to the morass.
Sure.
I come from 3.5 edition days where adding to the morass was the biggest problem of 3.5. It got to a point where you couldn't do anything without someone going, I've never heard of that spell, subclass, whatever. I don't know what you're doing, which made DMing impossible, apparently. I don't want to add to that mess. I think adding to that mess is just creating more problems. But finding a slight tweak, a small thing like if once a monster has lost one of its legendary resistances, it does less damage, loses a saving throw proficiency, something like that, some secondary effect to mean that it's not only a good thing to do because you'll eventually get to a point where you can do terrible things to them very quickly. It's also a good thing as it helps everyone else, and I'm not quite found it yet.
And you have to sort of also think about in world, what does that look like? When and that's sort of going, is there like a crystal that's shattered or something that you could visually see and go, yeah, that's that you broke that. That's
well, they added in. It's getting very rules nerdly, but mythic traits and the whole mythic reset thing that Mythic Monsters added in from Theros and has now become more of a widespread thing across the rest of the D&D books. I think it's brilliant. It's Final Fantasy boss syndrome. It's you haven't even faced my true form yet stuff. But that is a really good way to break up combat. Because combat can be a slog, and especially at high levels, and the ability to then go, you destroyed it, and now bloop, it's totally fine again, and it's got the same number of hit points again, and it's also got these 4 new abilities that you don't know how to deal with, but still it's the same thing. It changes the tier of the combat, and that's really good. Something similar with Legendary Resistances I'd really like, but I don't know what it is yet. I'm going to keep thinking about it, basically. But I think some kind of addition, like I'm currently working on a very small rules tweak in order to how to avoid combat. Because D&D does not have a good rule set for how to avoid combat. Once you're in combat with something, you have to roll one of the charisma-based checks with disadvantage, and even then on when you stop is woolly.
Yeah.
Whereas I've played with players who really want to play characters who are peaceable, who don't want to fight something, and if they get into a fight, try and stop it. That's their job in that fight, is try and stop the fight. So I'm trying to think of ways that a series of skill checks could be used to do that. That if you rolled, for example, if at any point before fighting a thing you rolled a certain kind of check, which is in Tasha's, to find out more about them and find out more about what they do and how they function and what they think about, you then have the ability to stop combat potentially because you've already rolled something, and the DC is based on combined numbers. I'm still working on it, but something like that would be a really nice addition without taking anything away from the existing rules.
I'm also thinking back to us playing Flustered, going, you need to tell us if we're killing them or not. How do I non-lethally hit someone with my sword? Just whack them with the side of my sword and just go, you're unconscious. I think that was like when we knocked out the Eladrin. It was like, the Eladrin's been unconscious for like hours. That's not good.
I mean, we've... Also, D&D suffers from Hollywoodization of violence. Like, people don't have a set number of hit points that once you've whittled them down, they're gone. That's not how life works. And also, if you punch someone and you knock them out, that doesn't happen. If it does happen, you've done someone serious brain damage and they're probably going to struggle to live for a while. Or at all. And yet Hollywood has told us that the best way to deal with it is to knock someone out. Knocking someone out is not a thing. But Hollywood considers it a thing. Do you want an even weirder one, Tom?
Yeah.
Bullets have no concussive force. If someone hits you with a bullet, chances are you will not notice.
Right.
Because they have no concussive force. If a bullet impacts you from a handgun and they're, 10 feet away, if you're in the middle of running, moving, doing something else, you probably won't notice. And suddenly go, I appear to be bleeding from the arm. Oh God, what's happened here? Gosh, oh God, I'm dying. They also don't push you back. They don't throw you off your feet. That doesn't happen. That's not how any of this actually works in real life. A gun is a point-click dead. That's all it is. And yet we've got this fetishization of guns in particular that, like, you take a shotgun and boom, and they go flying back. No. You make this big meaty hole in them. No. It's just they just fall over sometimes, and that's often because they're scared from the bang, not because of any impact or pressure. They found that there was an experiment done with guns where they'd shoot people with blanks and ask them to react, and then they all went, and flew over backwards. And if the gunshot was silent, they could still see the shot being fired, but they didn't really do anything because it's the impact from the noise and the fear.
I need to get down and out of the way. Yeah,
exactly.
Just the animal brain. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got this strange view of that. I mean, sword fighting in D&D, let's be very clear, is absolutely ridiculous if you think about real life sword fighting, which was more about blocking every single hit until you impact them with a sword, and then they're probably dead because you hit them with a piece of metal carved into them. Also, swords, the sharp edge on a sword was not sharp enough to like cut into someone. That's not what they're for. It was a big metal club where one side of it was more likely to split the skin. That's all. Just split it in the hopes that they would bleed to death at the same time as being bruised and battered to death. The whole... we have this fetishization of katanas. The reason they're folded 1,000 times over is because sheet metal was crap in the Asian parts of the world because they had a different technology for folding metal than we had in the West. So what you ended up with was swords that were folded 1,000 times over to make them even slightly sword-like. They broke all the time. You hit them against armor, they just ding! Oh.
Hit you with the hilt.
Japanese warfare, outside of this sort of fetishization of the katana, was all done with spears because they broke less often. Anyway, this is one of my big bugbears about life in general and Hollywoodization of violence. But I think in D&D you have to steer into the Hollywoodization of it a little bit. So I hit them with my sword; it does 10 points of damage. I understand people going, "Oh, but I don't want to hurt them." It's all make-believe. We're not actually hitting someone with a sword and going, "Ha-ha, bloody." No, I am attacking you. I'm trying to defeat you. What we decide that looks like is down to individual players, or down to the sort of tone of the campaign and stuff like that. But we don't need to sit there going, "Oh, we should be careful not to actually hurt the person." Doesn't matter what you hit them with. You're still hitting them with something. It's going to hurt them. Like, "Oh, we knocked them out. That's fine. We're good people."
We're the heroes.
We're the heroes.
Oh, well.
That was an absolute tangent, but it was a well worth tangent having.
This is yes. I think, as we said, just that sort of. Of course, you could always just come into with this. Be like, "Oh, it's magic." Like, sure, the sword is looking like magic. Yeah, just covers so much.
It's Hollywood. Yeah. You're making a Hollywood. D&D is born out of Hollywood violence to a certain extent, as most entertainment products are. TV is born out of Hollywood violence as well. It's all part of that same caboodle. So steer into it. I hit them with the sword. It does damage. How does it do damage? I don't know. It cuts their shin. Oh, they're bleeding from the shin, and they go, "Oh, I'm angry now." Yes, that's how that would work. Like, it doesn't matter. Steer into the Hollywoodization. Enjoy that silliness of it because it's not real. And if you're there going, "It's real, I have to make it verisimilitude as real," hit it with a sword. Cool, you're probably going to get septicemia.
Yes. We're living in a grubby world where it's just like, "Oh, I don't know."
Don't worry, I have a spell called Universal Panacea. We're fine.
Oh, fine. Purify food and water. Then we got rid of the cholera. Hooray!
Yeah, no one in D&D land has any kind of horrible, debilitating disease, unless plot demands that you do, in which case it's often resistant to magic because plot. Are we sensing anything else like, plague stories or movies about pandemics? Let's all be clear. The movie about the pandemic always does the same thing. This one's incurable. We can't cure this one with traditional medicine. They always throw that in early on. Why? Because otherwise there is no threat.
I guess if we all just took some penicillin, this would be fine. Oh yeah, great. By the way, the sun's going to explode. Right, okay. New plot. It just changes halfway through the film. You're like,
oh God. Dara O'Brien, and I recommend everyone Googles this, has a lovely rant about 2012, where the opening scene, someone says that the, I can't remember what it is, something's mutating. The neutrinos are mutating.
Oh no.
Which, that makes no sense at all. That is not a thing. It's impossible. You may as well have said that the lasagna's on fire. Like, it doesn't.
Oh no, the lasagna.
It doesn't. It has the same meaning. It's just sciencey words.
What's the Doctor Who reverse of polarity? You're like, go.
Reversing the polarity is Star Trek.
Oh well, what's the Doctor Who one then?
One must know their technobabble. So the sonic screwdriver does everything. Yeah. It's the plot fix device. It always has been the plot fix device. That's fine.
Apart from wood. Just that's my weak. Green Lantern has a thing against yellow. The Doctor can't work with wood.
Okay, to be fair, the weakness against yellow is the dumbest thing ever because it doesn't make sense. Like, everything has yellow tones. What does Green Lantern do of red? Color theory goes out the window, it seems. But I did like the Green Lantern's original setup was, I can do literally anything except for this, and this is small enough. Like, because Superman and Kryptonite, there's this incredibly rare mineral that turns up every week, because it has to. Whereas Green Lantern, it was always what was yellow, and what was this idea of like, I can't affect this one color, which had some cute moments, but was generally a bit silly. Then becoming, I can't show fear. Fear is the death. God, we just had a new Dune movie.
Yeah.
What's the Dune line? Fear is the something killer.
Yeah, little I did quite.
I haven't watched it yet. The Lynch is such a favourite of mine because it's so weird. And Dennis Villeneuve's a great director. I'm sure it's great, but is it going to be as weird as David Lynch? And also, it's Hans Zimmer's music, so I'm guessing there's lots of bombs in the back of every.
It's a worm appears. Run, Zendaya, run!
Oh God! Hey, Hans Zimmer, what happened to your career? At one point, I fell on a keyboard, and now everyone wants this. Bomb.
It's a bit like they were talking about like when they did the music for Jaws. It was like, that's a joke, right? Just 2 notes. It's like, no, that's the song. It's like, if you say so.
I'm pretty sure that bomb was originally was for Inception, right? It's the really slowed down Vion Rose.
Yeah.
But now every soundtrack's got just a random bomb.
I like to think it's still the Vion Rose, which is just infiltrated. You're like, no, it's in the dreamscape. It's into the movies now.
Oh, bomb.
Every film. Well, we said we were going to probably go over time, and we've only done 1 dice roll.
Bomb. Do you get this? I get this all the time, where I think the modern world is consistently faintly ridiculous. Like, there's just little things where you go, why has this become a cultural staple? I think the fact that it's an epic film, how do you know? Somewhere in the background, someone's taken a tuba and punched it.
Maybe it's in world, so it's how's it going?
Also, what happened to sound design? Like, there was
in trouble. No, fine.
Like, what happens to sound design? There was a point when sound design, like, I think it was like the early, I'm going to say 2020 or 2019 or something, where every film seemed to go, as long as we have the bomb, everything else can be, like, really badly sound designed. Like, they had to redo the vocals for that Batman film because Tom Hardy was incomprehensible. He's still not that comprehensible. No. Like, what's your, like, everyone's got an impression of Bane. It's bring that voice. That's Bane. That's ridiculous that's Bane. Now.
That's just that's the except like in the Harley Quinn cartoon. He's just like this now.
It's now the Bane voice. Oh, I couldn't tell you. Pop culture is fucking weird.
I'm Tom Hardy.
Not even like what Tom Hardy's famous for. Oh God.
Oh, on that wham.
I mean, Tenet, the film Tenet is just that wham noise with incomprehensible dialogue. That's what I remember from Tenet.
I haven't got round to watching it yet because I
will
just
tell you for now, Tom. It makes no sense at all, and it's just wham and that's it. That's the whole film.
Just it's that sort of thing that, and then people are like, well, you probably should have seen it in the cinema. I'm like, well, I'm not going to, so
only a cinema can make that bomb sound really.
Shake your drink. You're like, ooh, it's dramatic because it is loud. It's
dramatic because I can feel my colon engaging. Bomb.
It's a bit like when people have got like gallbladder things, when they like go on a roller coaster, it will shake it out. You're like, if you go watch Tenet, maybe it'll.
Are you saying that kidney stones are dealt with by roller coasters?
I think it's that sort of thing where they're talking about like it will shake you enough that sometimes they will dislodge. It's science. It's science, Chris. I reversed the polarity and cooked the lasagna. So science.
You know, I read the Watchmen cartoon, the original comic, when I was very young, and when the comedian turns around and says it's all a fucking joke, I did sort of read that line and go, I think this is going to be prescient throughout most of my life.
Yeah.
Not wrong.
No. Again, on that note, so, friend, anything you'd like to plug? As the world slowly but surely crumbles into the ocean.
Well, the Eternal Army, Niall's show, as you may have heard on Monday, I've seen on our Twitter account, has to finish a bit early because some of the cast have got really awesome work opportunities that we don't want to inhibit them from taking part in. So that's had 6 weeks. The final 6 weeks of that show will be, I think, April next year. We're still working on the details of when that's going to be, but will be next year. So we've put together 6 weeks of another show in a very short amount of time. You'll be pleased to know that it's not entirely off my own back, and that I'll explain. I had a concept years ago that I thought, not years, months ago, that I thought, I want to do this. I wrote it down and thought, I'll come back to this later. We were in the process of planning around Christmas and went, we should do some one-shots. So I took the concept, which was originally for a 4-parter, and condensed it down to a 1-parter for a 1-shot, taking out a lot of the extraneous detail and going just the meat. And then instead I've now gone, it's a 6-parter. Okay, I'll put all of the stuff from the 4-parter back in and expand it a bit further. That's what I've been working on. It's a really good fun one. It's still horror. Sorry, this is going to be a horror theme for the next couple of months. But it's folk horror. At least it's inspired by folk horror, because I absolutely adore folk horror because it's so odd. For those of you who, folk horror is something that people don't necessarily know about, so I'll be a little more detailed. Folk horror tends to be rural settings. It tends to be cultures and societies that live outside of the rest of society, and thus have developed a couple of belief systems that may or may not be peculiar to outside eyes. And there's often then a sort of performative event as part of that showcases that, and sometimes leads to violence, sometimes leads to the supernatural, sometimes to both. So we're steering into that. I'm very aware that I did write this with a very specific character in mind, which is Prosperous, who is coming back. Emma's playing Prosperous.
Hey!
Because Prosperous was originally from a town called Goldenfields. And Goldenfields in Forgotten Realms lore is the breadbasket of the north. It's where all the food is made. It's a walled community. It's a gigantic farm that is a walled community. You can see why the folk horror started to tick in for me a little bit there, So I've steered into some of that. I've got some nice folk horror ideas. We put together a lovely cast, including Rebecca, Evie, and Mike, who are coming, all coming across from the Eternal Army. And Ed's coming back as Fiorica as well.
I'm like, they're all going to be sacrificed to some ancient god to make sure that the wheat grows. Oh, bless them.
Well, I mean, I was about to say we don't have time to talk through all the details of folk horror, but I'm very aware that folk horror also has some issues, and I'm being very careful avoiding it. I don't want to make Christian allegories with it. I want to make sure that we're looking at it in universe. What would folk horror be like for, in this case, Chontea worship? I can't seem to get away from Chontea. She's in every damn campaign I run. But like looking into that kind of elements of it and taking out some of the Judeo-Christian symbology that often tends to come with these things. Like, wanting to make sure that there's elements of this that are grim and spooky, but also that we're taking out stuff that could be offensive. We don't want to do that at all. It's not
absolutely
my house at all. And then we'll probably end up pushing a bit more towards survival horror by the end. But there will be an element of that to it. It's going to be quite, spoopy.
We promised spoops.
Spoops. Promises spoops.
Chontea, the
Look, okay, I'm going to tell the editors they've got to find a bwong and we have to put it into everything now.
That's sort of secret. That's just sort of like
every now and again. And there's the villain. Bwong.
Sort of drops from the ceiling. You're like, oh my god. Oh, it's Spring Hill Jack. Just bouncing around. You're like, come back.
Need a monster that makes that noise.
Well, again, like it's a bit like, because I live by the sea, and like when you hear the foghorns, it just the Silent Hill part of my brain. I'm like, oh god, here comes the fog.
It's weird how some sounds become associated so completely with a contextualized point for you. Like foghorns is a good one. Whenever I hear an eagle cry in a game, in anything, I'm looking for a ledge to jump off because I'm so used to Assassin's Creed now that it'll be like, must be somewhere to jump. Look for hay. Like, that's what it turns into, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's utterly stupid, but it has become such a trigger because it's been absolutely years of doing exactly that. The opening bars of Dawn of the Dead, every time it's everything's screwed. Like it's an instantaneous guttural nope. Have you seen Night of the Living Dead, the original one, the first one?
I've seen bits, again, sort of like there's, and I also saw because they did a stage play of it.
Of Night of the Living Dead, cool.
Yeah,
it's one location, that makes sense. It's one location.
And so like the way it ended is sort of like, so it's the bit when they're they're moving the bodies, and then the cops are like, if that guy had been in charge things would have been much better. And then it's a rewind and then goes, and it's like, well, maybe if they had more guns, they would have been fine. And then watch it again. Yeah.
Did they do the, because the end of Night of the Living Dead, it's an incredible film because it's not, because Dawn of the Dead and then Day of the Dead and all the rest of it, they take that concept and run it up the wall in a really good way, but they do. Whereas Night of the Living Dead, the first one, it's utterly bizarre because it starts off with this couple in a graveyard putting flowers on a grave. Yeah. And then they're coming to get you, Barbara. It's just a random line that he just says to her when this guy wanders in. And then he just starts chasing her and he's dead apparently and starts chasing her and suddenly, oh, no, that's the plot now. But then the rest of it is in this farmhouse with various people trying to deal with Walking Dead effectively. And the lead's a black guy. Yeah. Which Romero had not planned. It was just randomly there. But it ends with the cop. It ends with them shooting him because they think he's a zombie. And watching that now going, my God, at the time that must have been like, I know because I do like horror movies. I know that they were driving the film up to one of the places to get it, like they had all of it on original cassette because they were filming in the 70s, and they had to go 60s, and they had to go and hand all this across to get it printed. They were in the car driving up when they found out that Martin Luther King had been assassinated. That's the end of their film. Yeah, that's like, it's interesting how contextually that changes and how these movies just become these different artifacts.
Yes, that's sort of, again, when you put the context where it's unavoidable, but that sort of that interesting thing of just going, this wasn't intended, but you can't ignore that now. That's sort of,
I was looking into this. There was this lovely documentary that Mark Gatiss did about horror movies in, I think, the early 2000s, a long time ago. But it's a lovely breakdown of why certain horror genres become so popular at certain times. And it was a really nice point about folk horror coming in the 70s. People were going, why has this now happened? And it was one of the directors going, well, it's a reaction to free love not working. Yeah. We all as a society, as a bunch of 20 or somethings, when peace over everything else, then John Lennon got shot, then, Hunter's military coups, and we quickly realized that we were all wrong. Yeah. So yes, we made films about bucolic environments that were absolutely destroyed by this strange internalized belief.
And then again, like alien invasion for McCarthyism and that sort of thing. And going, it could be you, it could be your neighbor, it could be that's
anyone. Yeah. And then the slasher movie coming around at the point when consumerism stopped being the malls and started being at home. The threat was at home. The threat's at home. The slashers started happening. Yeah, same principle. Yeah.
Well,
audience, if you're still with us, I apologize for being the rambliest person you've ever met.
No, I think this is my problem. I'm just like, I enjoy talking to you and just going, what we got, and then just like, meanwhile, the other campaign's like, is a raid supposed to be happening? We'll get there. We'll get there.
I apologize to myself and to all of Check These Out, who are lovely, lovely people. We will get there. I think you know what it is? I'm very lucky in that I am very privileged. I was raised in an environment where I could talk a lot and where there was encouragement to debate and discuss and read around a topic, so there was the ability to find out more. And it does affect how I DM. It really, really does. I don't go into any show I DM with I'll just do this. Like it's always, like I research a lot around the topics or the ideas of any given thing, so that I can make stuff have sort of historicity. That's probably quite a big word, but more meat to them. Like the first one I did for Adventure Still, when we were doing it originally with Watsy on their channel, we just went, it'll be a Hell episode. We'll do a 12-parter in Hell because Avernus is coming out. Won't it be grand? And I went, cool. I'm going to research all about the different layers of Hell. There's a river. My head went Apocalypse Now. I did all those, and I researched all of those pieces and fit them all together. Did it come up in the stream? No. A little bit. Not a lot.
But it's there.
Enough that if you're looking for it, you can go, this is a really detailed breakdown of Apocalypse movies, especially Apocalypse Now, which is not an Apocalypse movie at all.
But that
weird.
same sort of like we're going down the river, and it's sort of like
Like there was a whole section of that which was because Apocalypse Now was the sort of drive line through it, where I used Spec Ops: The Line as a piece of description around it, because they were in a sort of city in the middle of sand. I went, well, that is Spec Ops: The Line. Yeah. And it's Spec Ops: The Line, if you haven't played it, is gorgeous because Spec Ops is a military shooter, run around, get behind cover, ping, 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 shoot things. And it's actually a complete breakdown of war PTSD and how it affects soldiers, because it is Apocalypse Now retold. Yeah. And it's an incredible piece of game stuff. And I use so many elements from it to recreate Dubai effectively by making it, this big town in Hades. And there's so much around stuff like that when you're a creative, where, as I said, I think I'm very lucky. I think I'm very lucky to have been raised in a privileged environment where you had the time to not just go, I'm doing a thing, but to go, I'm doing a thing, and I've got the stat blocks, and I've got the story, and I know what's happening there. What are all the influences on it? Because if I can find out what my influences are, I can then either highlight them, I can repress them, I can find other ones if I don't like those ones.
Fill in the gaps and just go, well, that wasn't that didn't feel right. Now that's
like my original plan for Reaping of Goldenfields, if this is of interest to anyone, and I'm well over time, but it might be, was to make something very Wicker Man-y, because it was my folk horror in way. And I'd seen the Wicker Man, I liked the Wicker Man, and I thought that's probably going to be something Wicker Men are also a classic piece of symbology and imagery that works around this. People are going to understand that. That's great. And then I went, I don't know a lot about folk horror apart from the Wicker Man. That's a mistake. I should research this a bit more. And I started looking in more detail, and I watched The Witch, which is a modern one, which is Roger Eggers, who I utterly recommend. It's gorgeous. It's not. It's terrible. Terrifying. It is terrible in the sense that what happens in it
causes terror.
Causes terror. It's gorgeous, and it's so subtle. It causes terror with nothing happening. Just beautiful piece of cinema. And that then led to Ben Wheatley and all of Sightseers, A Field in England, Kill List, and a lot of stuff that he's done through there. I went back and watched Blood on Satan's Claw, which I don't recommend watching. Like it is an important piece of folk horror history. It's ritualized rape is never fun. No way to sugarcoat that. And certainly an element I looked at and went, there's a ritualized rape element of folk horror I have to work very hard to avoid. So that was important to research, also to go, I don't recommend anyone watches it. And then looking as well at, what's the third in that trilogy? It's Blood on Satan's Claw. Oh, Witchfinder General.
Okay,
Is awful.
Is that the Vincent Price?
It's Vincent Price at sort of latter end of his career. It's so dark. Like it ends, the ending of that film, my God, they finally kill off this bastard of a character who's going around England claiming to be a Witchfinder general and just murdering women because he can. And it's awful. It's really, really dark and really, really horrific. It ends with him being killed by people trying to save the lead male character, the lead, sort of the young romantic lead, who then berates them for killing him because you took him from me. You took the person that ruined my life, my wife's life, a lot of people that know, you took him from me. You didn't give me a chance to torture him too. In other words, he won. Yeah. It's awful. It's crushing. And it's so disturbing. But all of those elements are there.
Yeah.
All of those folk horror elements, you can see how they fit together. You can see how those pieces all come together. And it's all about communities and beliefs that other communities don't have, and the friction. Like, the beautiful thing about folk horror, once you start researching it, is it can apply to so many films. Straw Dogs is a folk horror, arguably. Get Out is a folk horror, arguably. Hot Fuzz is a folk horror, arguably. Like, there's some really lovely detail you can start getting into with that. And I'm not going to lie, the fact that when I went, Hot Fuzz is a folk horror, I haven't watched Hot Fuzz in ages, I'll watch Hot Fuzz again. And then when I'm taking all these notes, there's no reason I can't have these elements in a folk horror, because there's no reason a folk horror can't be funny.
And it doesn't necessarily need to be supernatural. It's that same. It's that again.
It's D&D. Like, it really, really is supernatural. But
well, because that's the crazy thing of, like, you know, you want to have the character who's going, again, like in folk horror, going, this is ridiculous. There's no such thing as creatures in the straw. This is, and then you're like, oh no, there's something there, and you're like, oh no, there's definitely, if God turned up, in our world as opposed to like D&D. You're like, oh yeah, cool, great, miracles, yeah.
One of the things about The Wicker Man that's so good is that there's never any, like, the supernatural does exist. It's never defined. There's always it could do. And that's really cool. But then if you compare that to something like, I mean, Hereditary I'm going to use, but my God, go in with a iron stomach.
Yeah.
Hereditary starts off and you go, well, none of this is real. None of it. And then for an hour and a half, it's not. And then suddenly it goes bananas. But when it goes bananas and when it becomes so terrifying is when you go, oh my God, it's all real. And not just it's all real, it's real and angry.
Yes.
Like, it's when you go, this is soul crushing. None of these characters are getting out alive, and they don't. Like, it's, Kill List is like that too. Kill List also does a beautiful job of going, none of it's supernatural until you go, it might be. And then it's not, and it's even worse. Because, again, folk horror has this tradition of being quite dark, of playing into, you can't really escape this, which I'm going to circumvent. I don't want to run a D&D game where all the players lose. What a boring game that would be. But using some of the imagery, the symbology, the interpretation of it, I think that's quite fun. It'd be quite a fun campaign, a bit different speed,
Yeah. And again, just like to solve the mystery, you're like, well, it's here. It's, but again, like something going, you could, in the world of D&D, you're like, maybe if we did sacrifice people, our apples will come back. That's a possibility. And then that is the issue of just going
genuinely what the plot is about.
Yeah.
Genuinely what the plot is about. Because in the D&D context, it might work. And maybe it does work. What does that make it worse or better?
And considering we've been talking about that this is a world with such violence, where you're like, again, where you're like looking at the ethics, it's like, well, you've killed so many people to get here. We're the breadbasket of the North, We're,
to a certain extent, I don't want to poke that, because that feels like popping the balloon. That feels a bit like poking too hard at the semblance of storytelling and just going, none of this is real. You could, if you were with a group and in the right context, and there's a reason you couldn't tell that story, we're going to steer a bit more Hollywood with it because I think it's more fun.
It's sort of like going, it is that thing of going, oh, you could, like we were saying, like, oh, if you hit someone in the head, it could cause brain damage. You're like, yes, but that's such a grim experience. Let's just enjoy shooting our spells and jumping and I
mean, for example, I don't think John Woo is in any way pretending that his films are real life, and that's fine, but they are incredibly good fun. I don't think anyone's saying that The Matrix is real. Well, most people. But then again, there's the point of it's cinematographically beautiful, which is the point. And there's a balance point to be hit there, especially with D&D, which is, there are other TTRPG systems out there, as we talk about quite a lot. We don't tend to stream them on the channel that often because it's not much of an audience for it. But also I think there's not much of an audience for it because most of them steer into different kinds of storytelling. Like, to give an example, Pathfinder is less Hollywood and more crunchy tactician, which is fine if you like that sort of thing, but it doesn't really do Hollywood action very well. Like, I don't know how much you're aware of this, but when 3rd edition was getting a bit too crunchy with rules, Eberron and 4th edition were, asked for, created, built in to bring back Hollywood-style action, to make it faster, snappier, better, easier. They pushed too far in that direction, and then 5th has pulled it back a little bit, but that was the idea. And game systems that have stayed at that crunch level, it's all about crunch. It's all about the best way to defeat an ogre is to, do all these rules things. Not, I flip off its shoulder and hit it in the head. Okay, make an attack roll. It's what most DMs would say at that point. Not, okay, roll these 16 checks, make sure you can do it, and then make the attack roll.
Oh, you failed one, and now you're just falling.
Oh no!
I'm going in the hole.
No! But that would be terrible D&D storytelling. But in other game systems, it would be, no, your complicated maneuver has not succeeded.
Yeah,
you must now go and do that maneuver over there, which is fine if that's the way you want to tell stories. But
as opposed to like doing this, where you're like, cool, you just spent half an hour doing. We've got a 3-hour stream. No, that's failed.
Well, it's where things like 10 Candles or other game systems, you go, they're amazing, but they are specifically designed around specific kinds of storytelling where the limitations are different. Like, in 10 Candles, I would argue you can literally do anything until you snuff a candle. That's the whole point. You can just narrate what your character does. There are no roles. You just say what your character does. There's no games master who can say you can't do that, you can do that. There's a games master there, but their job is not to stop you. It's to guide you towards some kind of narrative with everyone else. And that's fine, but that's not Hollywood storytelling at all.
No.
So if you go in as a D&D player and go, well, I kill all the zombies, game over, win, then it's a GM's job to go, and there are more.
Yeah.
You cannot defeat them all. And you as a D&D player go, but if I roll enough dice, no, it's not that game. It's not that game.
You can keep rolling the dice. You're going to go...
Which means it's not entertainment as we're used to watching it. And because Hollywoodization has hit TV, it's hit video games, hit everything else. Like, we're used to seeing things a certain way, and D&D steers into that very, very well.
Yeah. Wow. You said that was going to be an hour and a half, my friend, and that was an hour and a half. But again, all very fascinating. And again, sort of like...
I'm amazed it's just an hour and a half.
Yeah, I mean... Hell's bells. If you want to go for 2, I could go for 2.
No. I'm just rambling at that point. No.
Yeah. But again, it's been beautiful. You know, it's like we've covered a range of topics, and I think,
have indeed.
I think it's been for me it's been very interesting. Like talking to you as a DM, and then going, but also similar to you, where just go, okay, this is an interesting thing. But what if I looked at that? You know, looked like 3 books along, and then just go, what else can we pull? And hell,
there's always a bigger picture.
Yeah, you've got a really intense understanding of the Rings of Hell now. So who knows when that might suddenly come? You may go back and just go, okay, we're going down the river again.
Well, every project is an opportunity to learn about something new, which is always good. It also means that you then have that for future reference, but also I've kind of done it.
Yeah. No. Yeah. I said you could be in your little bubble, but you'd get bored, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Always, agree. Always try for new things. And go, I haven't tried that, you know. That could be fun for campaigns, for characters, you know, sort of go, I haven't played that. That's new. That's different. There is
no physical way to absorb all the knowledge in the world. There's too much. So as long as you find a topic where you're like, I'm going to dig into this, you've suddenly got hell.
So, in conclusion, warm. Okay. For those of you who've stuck around, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah. I mean, I almost feel like we should give extra codes or something at the end. You're like, there you go. I don't know. I can't find them. Where are we getting them from? I don't know. Here's some gems. Just like throw a gem at the camera.
Now you've said that we're going to do it, we're going to have to find some way to do it.
I didn't say we were going to. I said we should. We're not going to. I have no control.
Neither do I.
I'm the question lord. I control questions. I do not.
Question lord, Tom.
Yes,
that's quite a nice. As Trevor McDonald is now the games master again, you should be the question lord.
I should take that. I think I called myself that at one. I will find a cape for next time. It's like he's just wearing a blanket. It was like it is a cape of questions.
As long as your cape has a collar, it's a cape. Otherwise, it's something else. What's if it hasn't got a collar? I think it's a cloak. I think it's a cape if it has a collar. I think. Don't know.
That's a cloak fact.
Don't describe something where we both said we don't know, where it's a fact. It probably isn't a fact. I'm googling it.
Hey, no. As long as I point dramatically and go, that's a fact.
A cape is a sleeveless outer garment that drapes your back, arms, and chest. Yeah. Blah blah blah. Yeah. I'm sorry. Do the outro while I'm.
I said while we're looking at this. So if you have enjoyed this, we are streaming Talk Together every Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. We're back to GMT. The time scale. And yes, we're also streaming 6 to 9 p.m. GMT on Mondays. And so this is where we're trying to remember. Now, Monday is
Reaping of Goldenfields.
And Tuesday is The Lonely House
of Neverwinter. Yes.
Woo! Well done. Fact. Or just shouting in at random points.
Warm.
Hey, whatever you take away from tonight. Warm. So all of our shows are streamed at twitch.tv/rolltogetherrpg, and there should be a YouTube link in the chat. Thanks to our mods. Thanks to our mods for sticking around for this.
Thanks, mods.
Yeah, hard. Don't forget that you can also enjoy this as a podcast on, as we've established, a range of websites. Hey, if you find us on something obscure, let us know. If you leave a review, let us know. We do love chatting to our fans. Not to mention our fans as the D20 Club, our dice heads on Patreon. Pew, pew, pew. So big thanks to Dice Heads, all our sponsors and supporters. And it's the catchphrase now. Please stay classy at the table.
I've got some research on capes and cloaks. Should we
hi. Welcome back to the post-episode catch-up.
I was
wrong.
Chris. There is no distinction with a cape neck or cloak neck. A cape is a sleeveless outer garment that drapes your back, arms, and chest. Usually connects at the neck, so it's one that goes around the front usually. Whereas a cloak hangs loosely from the shoulders and falls below the knees. That's the difference.
This will become important in a campaign. You're like, where's your cloak? I think
value and knowledge of cape and cloak is good to know. Anyway,
it might win you a pub quiz. Who knows?
Stay educated at the table.
Yes. Stay educated at the table.
Bwom.